Good evening and welcome to Between the Lanes, episode number 131. I'm Ron.
I'm Shane.
And we are going to get started. Few things to talk about. We got a giveaway. We're going to talk about a new product and some race results. So, again, welcome to Between the Lanes, episode number 131. You can find us on Facebook. Between the Lanes is the page. You can find us on YouTube. Slot Racer is the channel, 131 episodes, some how-to videos, and some special episodes up there. And race results from last weekend. At Mark's Mono World, Canton, Ohio, was the benefit race for Cindy McMasters, and they ran three classes, GT1, Can-Am, and GTP. And in the GT1 class, Greg Fox was the winner. Bardo second, Ken Cognac was third. And then in Can-Am, Greg Fox was the winner. Bud Bardo second again. Scott Lemon was third. And in GTP, Scott Lemon was the winner. Al Rudy was second. And Jeremy Dennis was third. Then the AWRA was at Pit Pass Raceway down in, I think it's Newport, Tennessee. Sportsman class. Michael Smith was the winner. Chad Hutchins was second. Chad owns the raceway there. And Nick Ferris was third. And in stock cars, it was Nick Ferris winning with Raymond Smith second and Charles Eldridge third. And in legends, Charles Eldridge was the winner. Raymond Smith was second again. And Carl, I don't have a last name, Carl was third. Mad Fast Racing Series was at Turn and Burn Raceway in, is it Winston-Salem? Did we figure that out yet?
No.
Okay. In the Winston-Salem area, North Carolina. In the DTM class, Glenn Dimmitt was your winner. Guy Spalding was second, and Josh Barbie was third. GTP had Glenn Dimmitt winning again. Good job there to Glenn. Guy Spalding was second again, and Russ Martin was third. In the scale NASCAR class, Russ Martin was your winner. Guy Spalding was second. Jimmy Johnson was third. I think Jimmy Johnson shaved or something. He's trimmed his beard or something, because at first I was like, who is that? So, and then the last, I don't know if it was the last class run, but trucks, Guy Spalding was the winner. Timmy Bottom second. Josh Barbie was third. They had the Daytona 500 race for hard bodies at Fast Eddie's in Richmond, Indiana. And the winner of the race is Charlie Carnes there in the center of the front row. Second was Darren Warner, and third was Barry Stutt. And then the USCA series was at Thaser Raceway in South Bend, Indiana. 4.5-inch class was won by Ron Hirschman. Terry Watson second. Bill Spenek was third. Indy cars, Ron Hirschman was the winner. Rick Stegan was second. Nick Cena was third. Can-Am, Ron Hirschman was the winner. Zach Wood second. Steve Pepler was third. And the final class was Production 124th, which Ron Hirschman won again, pulling off the, I guess that'd be a grand slam if you win more than three classes. Steve Pepler second. Terry Watson in third. At Dallas Slot Cars, they had a Daytona 500 race as well, but this was for 4-inch flexi cars, stock cars. They actually had I'm not going to call it a dead heat tie, but they had a tie at the end of the race because it was a round robin and race. I think they had 16 entries. And when the power went off, the leader, I don't know who was actually on the track, but the leader of the track finished in the same section that someone else did. And they didn't mark the sections specifically, but both had the same laps and sections, so they declared it a tie. And Ed Bazin and Stephen Reed were tied for first. They're in the center of the picture there. And then second was Gary Dean, and third was Dave Barry. So Chantel says she has to buy another trophy now, but so it kind of worked out for the guy who finished fourth, because he wound up finishing third because of the tie. So, so, and then they had the kids race at Naperville, Illinois, that Brian Meharry puts on B&E Slot Sports. And of course, we don't put the photos of the kids on here, YouTube policy and privacy and stuff like that. So, but they did have, I think they had 14 or 16 for that show up. So, so that's that. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
Okay, this weekend, February 22nd, the New England Retro Racing group is in action. We have Hard Bodies at Thaser Raceway. Penn Jersey is in action at Race Place on Sunday. And the Ohio Challenge Cup Series is expecting a big turnout for the race at Mark's Model World this weekend. Next weekend, the 29th, which is leap year, for those who haven't been paying attention. They have the Leap Day Enduro Race down at the Slot Car Track Concord. East Coast Flexi Series is at Fast Tracks Bally, Pennsylvania. And the Penn Ohio Retro Series is at Mark's Model World. The first weekend of March, which will be the 7th, you got the Western States Wing Car Racing at Buena Park Raceway in California. Central Illinois Slot Series, their final race of the season is at Mid-America Bloomington. Hard Bodies are back at Pro Slot, and the BRS is at Boogie Speedway in Jackson, Michigan. And the Ohio Oval Series is at Mark's Model World on that Sunday of that weekend. That'd be the 8th. And then the weekend of the 14th, we got the Midwest Spec Series, and we got the Group F $100, or I guess it's the $100 World Championship Group F race at Mark's Model World. I know that they're racing some classes on Saturday prior to that. And also on the, then we go to the 21st. Hard Bodies are back at Thaser. Yuska is at Chicagoland Raceway. Flexi Nats is going on in Canada. And the last weekend of March, we got Ohio Challenge Cup at Fast Tracks, Fremont, Ohio, and East Coast Flexi Series at Smitty J's Raceway. So that's what's going on the next 4 or 5 weeks. And we have another giveaway tonight, and we'll give that away here in a little bit. Another one of the Elmo motor boxes. We're going to give away a red colored one this week. And
the red one.
It'll be a red one. Gave away blue last week, be red this week, and then next week we'll give away another blue one, and I'll be out of motor boxes to give away. So, okay, so I don't know if it was late last week or early this week, but then I guess it was last week because we're taping this on Tuesday this week. So the new DeFalco controller handles are out, and Shane can't see this picture, but Danny Karen posted this on Facebook. And he has a controller with the new handle, and then the old handle is sitting next to it. Not a whole lot of difference, except the new DeFalco controller is longer in length around your fist area where you hold on. There's a couple of different triggers available for it as an option. But you can see, like, the bottom screw hole of the handles. You can see the new handle is about a 1/2 inch longer than the old Parma Rust Kit handle that we've all used for, almost 50 years now, I guess. So, and we'll come back to that here after a few minutes. So, it's a shame you can't see this picture, but this is a picture of a dumpster behind a raceway, and there's some trash in there. And
Before.
Yeah. And we get a close-up picture. There was a slot car in the dumpster, and we'll tell that story here in a minute too. So that was kind of a funny story. So that's that for that. And so we're going to talk about the controller handle. So I was thinking about this. Like, I don't think I've ever raced. I'm almost 100% positive I have never used a controller in a race that hasn't had a Parma handle on it. I mean, I've used controllers in practice, or maybe someone says, try my controller, or my controller has a problem. Maybe it has a Red Fox handle on it. Maybe it had a Coford handle, but I've never raced any handle other than a Parma handle in all my years of racing. So My question to you, Shane, have you ever used different handles?
Yes.
Yes, he has.
Yep. I've used Parma. I've used Red Fox, and then whatever new handle. I guess they have a newer handle, but whatever handle they're currently putting on the new DeFalco controllers.
Yeah, they were using the Italian ones for a while, which is kind of
I've used those, and then whatever handle they put on a Karstein CS4.
Can't answer that question because I'd have to see it.
Yeah. And then whatever, I think they used to put Red Fox handles on the old Ruddick controllers. So, yes, I've used, Lord, I couldn't tell you how many handles I've used. Parma, by far, in my opinion, has been the best handle as far as sturdy, and it's like I was going to snap it in half.
Right.
The new handles they have on the new DeFalco controllers, they kind of move. Like I've tightened the screws.
Oh, the Italian.
And I don't.
The Italian handle, not this new one.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So sometimes I've noticed, like if I really put the squeeze on it, it kind of moves.
Right.
Red Fox handle, I broke that in my hand before squeezing it too tight.
Okay.
So yeah. So far, Parma, I guess, has survived the squeeze test.
I think the biggest difference in like controllers is not so much the handles, but it's the triggers and maybe the geometry of the trigger to the bottom half of the handle. But other than that, like I said, I mean, as far as the grip part of it, other than the Koford like square handle, they're all pretty similar. I haven't seen the Italian one. I guess Red Fox and Parma would probably be the only two handles I've ever really had in my hands.
Right.
So
now, as far as triggers, I've used the Parma trigger.
Right.
Then I guess it would be like a JK or Red Fox trigger.
Okay.
And the problem that I have with the JK/Red Fox trigger, the trigger is a little bit longer, and like towards the end of the trigger, it kind of like has that curve out, and it's kind of sharp and pointy.
Right.
So it catches my middle finger, so now I have like a huge callus on it.
Gotcha.
I think your callus is what, on your pointer finger?
It is on. Yeah, it's on. If you can see them, nice and. Yeah.
Okay, mine, obviously, being I'm on the phone, you can't see, but by the end of this week, racing at Marks, it'll be calloused back up. So.
Yeah, because that's another interesting, I guess, because like I raced for years and never got a count, never would get calluses or anything on my trigger finger, and then I guess maybe I didn't race for a month or something or a while, and then I went to a race and I got a blister.
Right.
And then after that, I would always, then it kind of developed into a callus, and then if I didn't race for a while, and then there would be a blister, they would go back to a callus. So I usually trim these off, not every week after a race, but I will after this weekend because I'm not going to race for 2 weeks. So, but when I go back to a race, then I'll be. I mean, it won't hurt or anything, but then practice Friday, and Friday night a callus will start to develop again. So, just happens. So,
yeah, like right now, I could rub my hand. I know I'm the weird one that races with their left hand, but like I can rub my finger over my middle finger right there where it hits, and it has a callus. You know what I mean? But it's not like super noticeable. But
so like you're right-handed, but you drive with your left hand, right?
Yes. Yeah, I am right-handed. I've tried to race with the right hand, and it's not good.
So when you first went to a slot car track and ran a car and stuff, did you start with your left hand or?
To be honest with you, I can't remember that,
okay.
But I can only assume. And that's just like when I raced RC cars, I did the trigger with my right or with my left hand,
right,
and I steered with my. Okay, let's start that over because I confused myself. I did the trigger with my left hand, and I steered with my right hand.
Okay, so the few times I RC raced, I would have to turn the radio around because the way well, it's changed a lot since then because they even had like a steering wheel that you could turn it like 180 degrees.
Right.
So the way it was, the way they were, you throttled with left and you steered with right. I could not do that. So I had to turn the whole thing around, and then I would throttle with my thumb and steer with my left hand because I had like no throttle control in my left hand. I just couldn't do it. And I think that was just bad habits of slot racing. So, and then, like I said, then they came out with the radio that you could turn the head of it so you could then steer with your left, and I could throttle with my index finger.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's just like everyone never really notices it, and we'll be in conversation, or someone will just happen to glance at me on the panel and be like, "You're left-handed?" And it's like, "No, I'm right-handed."
Right.
But for whatever reason, whenever I race, and then some guys are like, "Well, doesn't that make it hard to adjust your controller?" And it's just
right.
like, it can be, but I'm kind of used to it. You know what I mean?
Right. And there is a little bit of like slot racing history in the RC radios because Bob Emmett, back in the day, I'll have to find a picture. We'll have to do this on a future show. But one of the early radios was a square box, and up towards the upper left-hand corner was like an off-on switch for your light in a room, but it had a spring in it, and I don't know what you would call it, like a returning switch, and you would throttle with like your left thumb, and then you would steer with your right hand. The steering wheel was like in the middle of that box, and it had an antenna that came out of it. So then Bob Emmett developed, I don't know what I would call it, a system or something, but you could actually put a Parma handle on the side of the box, and it attached to like wire or piano wire or something that attached to that return switch, and that you could work your throttle then with a trigger finger, like a slot car. You was like a slot car handle was to the side of screwed to the side of this box, and you would drive like that and then steer with the other hand. So I'll have to find a picture of that for a future show because that was kind of a slot racing RC crossover. Because I mean, in the early days of RC racing, a lot of slot guys crossed over, or they went from slot racing to RC racing. So
yeah, that's what I did. I think I started out slot racing, and then I got into RC racing.
Right.
And then it was one of those: do I stick with RC racing, or do I go back racing go-karts? It's like, no, we're going slot cars.
Yeah. So. And Bob Emmett was a very smart, kind of ingenious type person who came up with a lot of stuff in his time that changed the way all of us kind of raced and did things at times. So, yep. So there's a connection there.
Right.
All right. So slot cars and trash cans. So I went up to Thaser on Friday to do some testing and stuff, and yeah, I was there for a couple hours, and then I'm not going to mention any names. So the racer shows up, and he was out running on the track, and I was talking to someone standing next to his box, and he walks over and he kind of throws his 4.5-inch car in his pit area in front of the box. You know, it was kind of not a hard toss, but kind of a like, oh, screw it toss, and I'm disgusted and done with this thing. So at that point, I kind of walked away and went back to doing what I was doing. And after a while, the racer comes over and he sets the car down on my tech block in front of me in my pit. And he says, "Do you see anything wrong with this car? 4.5-inch stock car, no body, no body on it." And I'm looking at it, and I looked at him. I said, "Is this a trick question?" Because I'm not seeing anything wrong with it. So I keep looking, and I go, "Well, if this is not a trick question, I don't see anything wrong with it." He says, "Well, car goes down the straightaway, and halfway down the straightaway, it just goes like the motor goes like half speed. It just goes half speed to slow." I'm like, okay. I'm kind of looking at the brushes and springs, and I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you've changed brushes and springs. And he says, I even changed lead wires. So I looked at his braid. His braid wasn't bad, but it was kind of, older looking, let's say. I mean, it wasn't dirty or frayed. It was just, how your braid kind of turns color, more of a darker
Right.
gold.
Goes from like a shiny gold to
Yeah,
a bronze.
they kind of get oxidized, So
Right.
I said, well, maybe you should go change your braid. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's not, but I would give that a try. So he went away. Well, he had told me that he bought 2 motors, and both motors, because the one motor started doing it. So then he bought a new motor, and that motor started doing it. And I said, well, change your braid. And then I heard no more. An hour or two later, we're getting ready to leave for the night, and I'm told that the racer threw his car in the dumpster. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, he threw his car in the dumpster. So I went over and looked, and then sure enough, there's the car sitting in the dumpster. So I said, well, maybe we should get that out. He might change his mind or something, and he was going to have to dive in the dumpster to get it. So we left it overnight, and then the next morning I got there, and I thought, well, if his car's still in the dumpster, I'll take it out, and I'll go in and I'll put one of my spare motors in it, and he can use that. And so I went in and got the track grabber gripper thing, and
Yes, I was going to say, you grabbed the little claw.
we clawed her out of there, and I took it in, and unbeknownst to him, I went over and I changed motors in it, and then I ran it a couple laps real quick and said, yeah, okay, it runs normal. And so I walked over and said, hey, I said, your car, I think, got better just sitting outside all night in the cold. Good thing it didn't rain, right? So,
Yeah.
so
Or a good thing they didn't dump it or add to it.
So he went over and he ran it, and then he entered the race, and he ran the race. I don't remember where he finished, but that motor was much better than the other 2 he had. So that was that. So slot cars in the dumpster.
Slot cars in the dumpster.
Because back in the day, there was Springfield, Ohio. I think I've told this story before. There was a raceway. They had the Coca-Cola race there, and behind the raceway was a set of railroad tracks. And if guys had cars that they couldn't get working well, they would go out and lay them on the rail and let the 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I think I remember you told me about that.
They local run over them. Yeah. So from train tracks to dumpsters. Dumpsters are less destructive.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to think. If anyone would know, it would be Bobby. I don't think I want to say I vaguely remember me slamming one in the trash can next to the pit box one time.
Yep. I've seen.
And I think it was just out of aggravation or something. I don't know.
I've seen slot cars spiked, body slammed.
I've seen them spiked. Yeah,
I've seen them thrown across the room. I've seen them twisted and busted in 2. I've seen them dremelled in 2. I've seen them smashed by foot, smashed by car.
We call that the hillbilly stomp. I've seen that.
I've seen hammers taken to them and motors. So
I've took a hammer to a motor before. I've done that one. That's a funny story there.
Well, let's hear it.
Nah. Off air.
Okay.
Nah.
Off air.
Off air.
Off air. Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't my motor, but let's just say the person, it hit a nerve. So I was like, here, I'll fix it.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've seen cars walled.
Yeah,
I've seen cars like.
I've slammed one in the trash can before. I remember walking over to my box, and I more or less ripped the body off of it, and the trash can was right next to me, and I just took it, slammed it in there, and went up to the counter. I think got a drink, kind of walked around for 5 minutes or so, went back, got it out, and threw it in the box. I was like, all right, I'm good.
And I've seen them like, on a king track, just held wide open into the dead man, or maybe into the 90 and just buried on purpose. I've seen that in wreck, in wrecks and racing and riders, but I've seen people just
One
intentionally
time,
put them on the track and wall them.
yeah, I've ran one wide open before. So, I mean, everyone knows Randy's track, King Cobra.
Right.
And the driver's panel used to be on the opposite side.
Right.
So where the driver's panel at now, which technically where it's supposed to be.
Right. Used to
it
be
used to be on the other side.
Yeah, between the finger and the donut.
Right. So what was it? It was maybe my second or third time ever racing there. And it was a Mid-South race. Like 2-3 weeks before that, I was like sick as a dog. Was out of work for a week. Double ear infection. I mean, I had to work. So my right ear was still stopped up.
Oh, yeah.
So I couldn't hear anything out of my right ear. And this is where I learned, you know, with everything going on, you'd be surprised how much hearing affects your racing.
Yes, it does.
And I remember watching the car. Everything was going good. I never kind of got, because some people worried that I may get dizzy because I couldn't hear.
Right.
You know, and they were like, you know, are you getting dizzy? I was like, no dizzy spells. It's just, if I hung you to death, or if you're talking to me and I'm just looking at you like with a blank look, I can't hear nothing out of my right ear.
Right.
So anyways, I remember taking off down the middle straightaway that takes you into the donut. I never lifted.
Oh.
And so it was toward the end of a heat, because I remember seeing my car and I just remember flooring it and I never lifted. It was just wham. And like the turn marshals down there in the donut, they all jumped and they were like, was that a rider? You know, and then even I don't know if Randy was running the race or Shelly was running the race. They were like, was that a rider? And I'm like, no, that was me. And they were like, is everything all right? And I was like, I forgot to lift. And they were like, why? And I was like, I didn't hear the car.
Right.
And they were like, huh? And they're like, you weren't looking at it? And I was like, no, I was looking at it, but like, I don't know what it was, but for some reason, the wires got mixed up and I never lifted. And it was the end of the heat, walked over to the box and I looked at it and I hit it so hard that it knocked the bushing out. So I was just like, yeah, this thing's done. Not to mention went from a 4-inch car to about a 3.5-inch car. So I was like, yeah, I'm done.
Right. And if you don't think hearing your car affects driving it, just go to the track and stick some earplugs in both ears and then maybe one ear or the other and run some laps and see what a difference it makes.
And I think that was the only race I did that. In every other race I was fine in it, but it was just so weird because I just remember they were like, what happened? I'm like, I couldn't hear the car and I never lifted, you know?
Yep. And I also forgot earlier, this weekend is also the Flexi Fest West race.
That's a tongue twister.
At Fast Tracks in Rockland, California. So that's this weekend too, the 22nd.
A lot of big races this weekend.
Yeah. Yep. All right, we're going to give away this red motor box, or this red insert goes in there. Give away the whole motor box, not just the insert. So gave away one last week. We're going to give away one this week. It's got a little button here you flip. Well, I'll do it this way. It opens it. Like I said, it holds 13 motors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. 13 motors. So the lucky winner is going to be mix them up real good. Tim Burton. As a matter of fact, I can deliver that to him this weekend. Tim Burton.
Yeah, he should be at Mark, shouldn't he?
Yes. Tim Burton, I'll be bringing you a present, a gift. So let me put this back in the sleeve. We'll put his name on it. Maybe you can present it to him.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see him all the time checking in, but for the life of me, I can't put a face with a name.
Oh, you know him once you see him. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's one of those deals. All the races I guess I've recently started going to over the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of people know me, and it's like, yeah, I'm not trying to be rude, but I really don't remember you, you know?
Right.
I might have to do the old cheat sheet and look at Facebook.
Right.
See if I can pull them up.
Yep. So, yeah. So, I was at the USCA race last weekend. They had a good turnout. Probably one of the larger turnouts they've had for a while at one of their events. Good local turnout. Good traveling turnout. We had 4 guys from Wiley Raceway up by Rockford, Illinois. Mainly they're oval racers. Nick Cena has some kind of extensive road course. He was USRA national champion years ago, and that track usually kicks your butt a little bit the first time you run on it. I mean, anybody that comes there, and I was really impressed with Nick and Billy and Bill and Alex Livingston. They got around the track pretty good. They stayed out of everybody's way. They respected everybody else. Faster guys were coming, they let them go. So I was really impressed with those 4 guys. And then Ken Green, who is from Indiana, who moved to Florida like 5 years ago, and he's moved back to Indiana now. So it was his, as far as I know, it was his first race, traveling race since he's been back. I don't know how long he's been back, a couple months maybe, but he went up there. First time he'd been there, he did pretty good. He kept getting faster as the more he practiced, and he did good. I mean, all them guys will do better when they go back because they've been there and they know what to expect, and they've got laps on the track, and so it was a good time, good turnout.
This was the USCA race, you said?
Yeah, it was the USCA race at Thaser.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, we had a good time.
That was the first race that the Eagle motor was allowed, wasn't it?
Yeah, because they added the Retro Eagle and the Eagle to Indy cars and production 124th classes, because the motor of choice prior to that, or I'm not gonna say prior, the motor of choice previously had been the Hawk 7. Like Hawk 7s are legal, the Professor motor's legal, Retro Hawk, and the B52 motor. But I mean, most everybody runs Hawk 7s in those 2 classes. So it was the first time I had raced an Eagle motor. Monday prior to last weekend, I went up to the local track here, which is an oval track, and I put 4 motors in 4 cars, and thought, well, I'll go out there and run them just to get a feel for what the throttle response and brakes and stuff are, because I'd heard the brakes were pretty good on them. And so I went out there and I had 4 cars with 4 motors, all geared the same. 2 cars were a little heavier than 2 of the other cars. Again, it's an oval track. I just wanted to I didn't run the motors in on a power supply. I just put them in cars, oil them up, put them on the track. And the first, the first car, the first lap, it went 2.2, 220 was a lap time, 96 foot oval. I was on red lane, and the same cars with built Chinese 16D motors, the track record's 214. So I'm like, okay, this motor's, first lap 220. And after I ran it about 40 laps, it had went from 220 to 201. So I let it cool down. I put the second car on again, first lap 220. It took maybe close to 80 laps before it started running 202. So I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. Those 2 cars were kind of identical, but the motors ran the same. So I put the next car on, which was a little bit lighter, and I thought, well, this maybe I'll go 1.9s, So
Right.
took off, first lap 220, but the car didn't hook up like the other two cars did, and I wasn't going to go into a big tire chasing deal. It's just run laps on the motors, and I could feel the motors pulling harder and going through the bank better, and like that car when I went like 212, and I know if I had some forward bite off the 3 turns, it would have been a 2.0 motor. So put the fourth car on, and again, it didn't hook up as well either. So, but that motor wound up going 215. So I was kind of impressed that if all the cars would have been equal, I think all the motors would have been equal. So 4 for 4 was pretty good. So I took the 2 motors out of the cars that didn't hook up, and I put those in the Indy cars because you got to gear them like 1036. And I left the other 2 cars alone because you have to run 11-tooth pinions on those. And then went up there to Thaser, and the Indy cars pretty much in practice ran identical times, and the 2 production cars pretty much ran identical times in practice. So I was really impressed that, I'm not going to say I got good motors, but I got consistent motors. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And even in the race, like IndyCar race, because some people, I've heard different stories. Some people say that the Eagles and the Hawk 7s run the same speed. I've had a couple people tell me they think the Retro Eagles run a little faster than the Hawk 7s. But in the race, there was 2 cars that had Hawk 7s in the IndyCar race. They were faster than I was down the straightaway.
Right.
But I was faster in the back half. And I don't really think that was motor more than it was probably car setup, having the right tire, and driving. So, for example, I set the fastest lap race of 493 or 497. I take that back, 497. Second fast time was Bill, and he had the Hawk 7, and he went 516. So there was like 0.2 difference between our fastest laps. But I'm sure he would tell you that, Ron was way faster in the back half. And, my cars were very good, I thought. I don't think I could have made them better. We first got there, again, testing. The cars were loose at first. I had 2 Indy cars. They were both kind of loose. And the tires I thought were going to work, I'm like, well, let's go put something else on here. So I went from a plastic hub to a metal hub, and it was like day and night difference. The cars really hooked up, and that's what I stayed on. And those tires were good practice and racing. So don't be afraid to try different tires, as I always say. And same thing with the production cars. They like the metal hub better than the plastic hub.
Right.
So, because I'm thinking on that track, I want a plastic hub and flex a little bit, turn the car a little bit better. But, like the cars were loose because when they would rebound off the, like from rolling over, flexing.
Right, they do the wiggle.
Yeah, they shoot back and they do the wiggle. So I'm like, well, let's put metal hubs on here. And yeah, baby, now we were hooked up. So, but, Bill had some trouble in the races. He would have been right up there with me and Terry, or me and Rick, excuse me. Terry was there in the hunt too, but, Rick Stagan was like, because he runs those cars every week, he was putting up the big lap totals, and I may have beat him by 2, but it was a close race. So, but I couldn't screw up. If I'd screwed up, then he would have had me. So
he would have pounced.
He would have pounced. What saved me was I had a good red. I ran one more lap on red than he did. But, again, most guys were turning 20s on red. I think Rick turned 21. I turned 22. I wanted 22. I was starting right in front of the counter. It's like I got to run a perfect heat to get 22. But I'll take 21. But I got to 22. So that was like, okay, that's – and I just had it like 23 out the rest of the way to beat him because he'd 23'd on all the lanes that I was going to finish on. So.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so he had lost a race, or he'd lost a lap early in the race, and I can't say I can't say that I mean I came off one time all by myself, but I didn't lose a lap. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I lost half a lap, but I didn't lose much time.
You mean you didn't yell track?
No, that was pretty good, because when I got to the track, Fred Fowler was like, I watched the show. He goes, "You guys are so right on the track calls." And see, when we used to race at Thaser, when Dave Gearing was running it and owned it, we would race no track calls. I mean, it was brutal, like no track calls, not even rider. No track calls. Straightaway, no track calls. And then over time, he accepted the rider thing.
Right.
And then there was times like, if it's in a straightaway and a marshal can't get it right away, in order to prevent someone from tearing their cars up, he would shut it off. And we were kind of like back to Dave Gearing style this weekend, because there was a lot of straightaway calls that they didn't shut the track off for. And
you're on the straightaway marshal?
We had, there's a top turn marshal, then there's a marshal kind of stands in the middle. Well, no, you really don't, because it's a hill climb. So you come out of the bank and you've got the bottom turn, or the dead man as they call it. So there's a marshal, looking for cars to come off in that turn. And behind him is the straightaway. So sometimes he has to turn around and get the cars on the straightaway. Well, if it's one or two cars, sometimes it's a lucky save. But when you get two or three or four cars off, it gets pretty ugly. So there was a couple times I'm driving and I can hear the big bam, 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 and I would just drive up to a little straight before the top turn and, stop and, okay, it's clear, I can go, or I'd wait, because, you can't see cars because of hands and people are blocking your view. And so, yeah, you just got to use your ears, and when you hear those big crashes, you need to slow down and look and not drive into it. So, yeah, there wasn't very many track calls. And I don't think our show had an effect on that, but it was a discussion about, I agreed with it, and everybody's like, "What are you talking about?" Well, last night on the show he talked about track calls, and we had some conversations about it. So, and I didn't have anybody tell me that we were wrong, or we don't know what we're talking about either. But that was the only person that said anything about the show last week in the track calls. So, and we had plenty of marshals too. So there was a couple times that there's a turn, I guess you would call it the finger. I always call it the keyhole, because you come into it and you got to make an angle and come around a weird radius kind of turn.
Right.
And Alex Livingston, he turned marshaled over there a lot. He did a super job marshaling, but there was a couple times he had 3, 4, maybe 5 cars off, and they didn't shut the track off. But that's the way it should be. I mean, if you hear the crash over there, you got to slow down and not drive into it.
Right.
So, yep. And, the biggest problem with people driving into other people when they're off the track is when people come off, they don't say, they might yell their color.
Right.
But usually if I'm, if I'm on Purple Lane and I'm sitting in Purple's way, I'll say, "Hey, I'm off over there." I'm off in that turn.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could treat a wreck during the race kind of like coming off during practice, because when you come off of practice, you generally, if someone's on the track, you tell them, "Hey, I'm off over here."
Right.
Caution over here,
Right. So, yeah,
I'm sure you've heard me sometimes during a race. I may not know who's on that color, because sometimes I may not even know the person.
Right.
But I'll try to yell, "Hey, watch out," or if you're beside me and I know I'm in your lane, I may say, "Hey, watch over,"
Right. Well, that's like I was on orange and Dave Solomon, I think, was on white, and I was coming up to pass him, and I spun the car out, and he hit it I mean, he couldn't have stopped. There was no way. I just came off right in front of him and bam, and totally my fault. And he pulled out. I think someone said it knocked his motor out or something, but yeah, it was totally my fault and it's something that shouldn't have happened, but sometimes
another thing too that I guess brings up another good topic is like, for instance, this week we're at Mark's, we're racing. You know, people are going to come off in a donut.
Right.
So if I'm off in the donut, you're beside me, and I know you're getting ready to come through the donut, and you're ready to put me on.
Right.
I say, Ron, I'm coming on in the donut.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's
why you don't go blazing in there. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, you would just hit me and knock me back off. But
right.
There's always that one time where the turn marshal may still have their hand on the car.
Yep.
And then you hit his finger, you hit the car, and then instead of turning up the hill, you turn into a wall.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's like when I'm racing and someone to my left or right, I know they're off. Usually you can tell when someone's off because they go, or they say like, start yelling their color. And like, if I can't take my eyes and look to where they're at, I'll start asking, are you rolling? Are you rolling? Are you rolling?
Right.
And sometimes you get an answer and sometimes you don't, but.
Yeah, because for the most part, I think 9 times out of 10, if it's someone I know,
right.
You know what I mean? Or whatever. I mean, there's been plenty of races we've raced side by side. I'm generally talking to you.
Right. Yeah. And
there was the one time this past year up at Rogers, during the Flexi flats race, when I seen you kept moving your hand in your controller, I was like, you all right?
Yeah. And then there's times like if I fall off in the donut, I'm on orange, I'll tell the guy on green, like, hey, be careful in the donut. I'm off over there.
Right.
Because I don't want them to come flying around there and, like you said, hit the marshal's hand or,
Yeah.
But, even though sometimes.
If you're slowing up, you got to tell the guy next to you, hey, check up in the donut because you're backing up. So he may not be backing up, coming in there full steam, and it can be a disaster.
Right. And then sometimes, even though you tell people it's like their hearing aid is off, as I say. Like,
yeah.
They still clobber you or clobber themselves.
Cars.
Yeah.
You have to look past the hood pin sometimes.
Yep.
Just sometimes, not all the time, but every now and again, if you look past the hood pins, you'll be surprised how much more racetrack you can see.
Well, see, here's the thing to think about, okay? If let's say you're on a track and you're doing 4-second laps.
Right.
And let's say I am half a lap ahead of you. I'm 2 seconds ahead of you. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you fall off behind me, I'm going to be to where you're at in 2 seconds.
Right.
Okay? But what you have to think about is usually it takes a marshal 1 second just to react.
Right.
Okay? And that's being fast. If he can grab that car and get it up out of the way in 1 second, but usually it's a 2 second deal on, I'm just saying on average.
Right.
Because it takes you one full second to react when something happens. And that's if the marshal's paying attention. If the marshal's kind of watching the race and the car falls off in front of him, and then someone says, hey, well, now we're at the 2 second mark. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
That's things that you have to think about and consider. And of course, if you're on a track, you're doing 2 second laps, like say a fast oval.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. It's just crazy. I mean, I've seen guys get marshaled good. Like, say, if you're on green lane and I'm on blue, and you can get marshaled good, and I can still might lap you twice before they get you on, and they were doing a good job. So, but if they fumble or, the worst part about the marshalling deal is when people don't pick up the cars and get them out of the way. They put their hand on them and they want to slide them around to get them wherever. And that causes more wrecks. And if I'm, like right behind you and you come off and, the marshal's doesn't, he might have his hand on it, but he's trying to he might slide it into my way or something. Bam.
Oh, yeah.
That happens a lot. So, yep, you got to use your ears when you're racing. So don't put your earplugs in.
Yep.
when you're
And
racing.
don't race when you're sick like I did and be all stopped up, because that's not fun either.
But you wanted to race, so you did it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that, and I was tight points battle, so.
Okay. Well, that's all I've got for this week. How about you?
Yeah, that's all I got. I got to
You were ready to go
do a little
racing.
bit. Yeah, it's been a nice, I can finally say, boys and girls, I'm going racing.
What's it been, like 8 weeks?
My last race was last year, December.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's
8 to
a lot
10
of
weeks.
preparation, a lot of note taking. I've had some nice, it's been a nice time off.
Right.
I'm ready to get back to it, though.
I understand. Well,
Yeah.
I'll see you in a few days,
Alrighty.
and we'll lock horns.
Yep.
All right. Until next week, what's the secret word, Shane?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
OCC.
Okay, we can do OCC.
I was going to say, we're both going this week into the OCC race.
That's
so.
not a word, but OCC. Is that like being down with, what was that rap song? Or
Are you down with OPP?
OPP, yeah. You down with the OPP? Yeah. I'm down with the OCC.
We're going to be getting down with the OCC this weekend, so it should be a good time.
All right. If you're going racing this weekend, safe travels, good luck, win, do your best, testing. And we'll be back next week with episode 132. Should be a good one. See you next week.